Hello, friends. Welcome to Level Up with Debbie Neal. I am your host. There is nowhere I would rather be than right here, right now with you. This podcast is all about leveling up in all aspects of our lives. Thank you for being here. I am so grateful. I'm excited to be on this journey with you. Together, we are leveling up. You ready? Hello, my Level Up friends and family. You guys, I'm so pumped for today. We have actually had these two incredible women on several podcasts now, and we've done a lot of talking about gut health and just the connection with mental health and all of these different things. And today we're going to have like a really real conversation. And first of all, I've been getting incredible feedback about these podcasts. Really, really incredible. You guys are loving them. You're sharing them. You're learning so much from them. And also, on a different note, I actually feel guilty because on the last one we talked about, you guys mentioned how, oh, by the way, so we're here today with Dr. Tanda Cook and Dr. Collier, okay? And we're going to be talking about creating a healthy relationship with food. But when we did the last podcast, when we talked about mental well-being, one of the things you talked about was getting a pet. And then if you remember, I was like, yeah, but don't get a pet like my brother's because he has corgis and they really stress me out. Yeah. So there's this thing called karma. And I was put in a position to save one of their lives this week for thousands of dollars because he had a stomach obstruction. So I'm only going to talk love about that dog. But I was like, I got to focus on abundance. I have to focus on abundance. I really don't even like this dog. But okay. Anyway, you guys, so I'm going to give you a brief bio of both of them because you might be listening today for the very first time. And if you are listening today for the very first time, I really encourage you to go back. I think this is our fourth podcast together, and all the information has been really informative. Every single time we do a podcast, I learn so much more. I threw away my Keurigs. I'm eating sauerkraut on a regular basis. I learned what kimchi was, right? Kimchi, something like that. Kabuka, I don't even know. Okay. And so like I'm learning these things. So you're going to learn so much because there's so much involved in what we put into our body and understanding the connection of gut health to so many different things. So let's go into the introduction so we can get right in. Dr. Tanda Cook is a naturopathic physician, a food expert, a published author, an international speaker, a blogger, as well as a health and lifestyle coach. She is wildly passionate about educating and inspiring people to take steps to add health to their lives. We also have her partner in crime, Dr. Collier, and she is a naturopathic physician, a health coach, a food expert, and speaker who has dedicated her life's work to passionately helping women become empowered in their health by reacquainting them with the innate wisdom their body holds to heal. And so today we're going to be talking all things about relationship to food. And you guys, we're all really guilty of this. Like, I think I have a great relationship. I love food. Like, I'm a foodie, but there are things that I do that are not like, well, I will be like, I'll reward myself with food. Sometimes I'll punish myself with food. So there's all different things. And I know that it's wrong. And then yet I will still repeat those patterns. So we're really going to just dive into this today and kind of really learn about things. And before we dive into what a healthy relationship to food is, what we're going to start off first is talking about what most women are caught in currently that's holding them back from regulation with food and a healthy relationship with themselves and their body. So to start that, I don't know which one of you is going to kick it off, but I am going to turn it over to you guys. And you guys, if I think we're going to get rid of all background noise, but I'm redoing my kitchen. So I'll mute myself if we hear some noise and some music coming from downstairs.
No, that's awesome. So again, this is, like you said, the fourth time being together, and we love you so much. And, and all of these topics we're very passionate about, but I think this one probably hits it home the most because when we sort of go underneath the hood of our relationship with our life, and food being one of those pieces of our life, how you do anything is how you do everything. I mean, you and your Level Up calls, I'm sure, talk about that a lot. It's like how you brush your teeth is how you drive your car, is how you're in relationship, is how you spend money, is how you put your pajamas on. And so the number one reason that women find Katie and I is for weight loss. And that actually breaks our heart because weight is a really poor metric of health. And yet, especially in our society, we get hyper focused on it, and we have women weighing themselves 14 times a day and calculating everything and anything that's going into their mouth. And that's just no way to live. There's no freedom around that. And then beating themselves up when they gain half a pound because they, ate some salt the day before and they're blaming that. And so what Katie and I do that is actually really a beautiful and sometimes really painful and challenging process for women, because that's who we mostly work with, is when we kind of lift up the hood of what are they telling themselves about food? What are they telling themselves about their body? What are their food rules? What can and cannot do or say or cheat or overexercise around food? And so that's the conversation today, is sort of what Katie and I see as the sticking points for people, and then how to unstick, because you absolutely can. And it's a really fun process watching women release the white knuckled grip that they have around food, whether that's coming out, like you said, Debbie, they're punishing themselves or rewarding themselves, and that's a pretty common, all the way to, weighing all of their food, weighing themselves while they're eating. I mean, it gets kind of down to crazy town. And so what we want to do is really help women heal around that, because when you can release that white knuckle, you release your white knuckle on a lot of other things, and you start to really get into your body and love the skin that you're in, and have a totally new relationship with your life and with your body, with your partner, with money, with your business, with your relationships in general. And so again, it's like once you start to free yourself around the vice that most of us have around food, your life becomes pretty cool. And I'm going to let Katie do a lot of this, because she's, many of you all know that I have been in eating disorder recovery, suffered from an eating disorder for over 25 years, and have learned in the past year that this is possible, and holding the hand tightly of patients who are going through the same thing, and or just starting their journey on actually really taking a look at their relationship with food. And then being privileged to being best friends with Katie, who has been, 7 years out of eating disorder recovery, and watching her find deep regulation and passion and love for her life. And having that as a role model and a coach has been just a gift. But Katie she's a true unicorn when it comes to helping people understand where they're stuck from a 30,000 foot view. And I have the gift of helping people on the ground, because I'm still in it. I don't know if that's helpful, but it's just been a really cool journey.
Even as I just heard you speak, I mean, you guys know the company I'm aligned with, the program that they have. And I've developed such a healthier relationship with food because of it. However, it's still I don't want to use the word struggle, because I don't like the word struggle, but just like you said, women, they weigh themselves or they'll look at their weight, and we can't measure health based on weight. I understand that, but I don't always live that, because when I don't look my best, I don't feel my best. Does that make sense? If I put on 5 pounds, I'm one of those people that could go fluctuate 5 pounds and feel like either, oh my God, I look horrendous, or a supermodel. Now I know I don't look either one of those things, but mentally, you just feel really good getting dressed versus I shouldn't even be wearing this. And I don't know if it's the relationship with food for me, or I just feel healthier when I don't have the bloat, when my gut is in check, when there is a certain weight, and I do connect it with weight, but I just feel better when I'm my healthiest. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing or somewhere in between.
Yeah. I mean, it totally depends, and I think what is really important to consider with this is that there's a lot of reasons why we lose our ability to be in our body and regulate around food, kind of from our own innate knowing. We outsource a lot of that. We outsource that to the scale, to a diet, to a cleanse, to an exercise routine, whatever it may be, because we've lost our ability to trust our own body. And that's really not by mistake. I mean, diet culture is everywhere, and 90% of diets fail. because of this reason, is because we go it's like an all or nothing approach. And when it's like how our relationship with food then plays out with our relationship to our body. And it's a nuanced conversation that I don't think enough people are having, of like, can we eat intuitively? Can we have food freedom? Can we also feel good in our bodies? And can we also be eating for health? Right? It's like, I think there's this idea that it can't all exist in the same plane. It's like, we're either eating healthily or we're not. Right? We either are like, eating the cookies and the cakes, or we're eating vegetables and sauerkraut, but that there's actually no room for play and there's no room for freedom around food. And that's where, it's like how we then play it out. It's like, what is the mentality around it? Like if you're gaining 5 pounds and you just like don't feel good, is that because you actually don't feel good? Is it because of your relationship to food? Like it's hard for me to say, but I think that there's important messaging around that of there's a place for both. We can take care of our bodies and nourish ourselves and want to feel our best and not have, bloating and gas and constipation and whatever may come with that. And we can also enjoy food and have food freedom. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think diet culture tells us that we can't have our cake and eat it too. It's like we have to just be completely strict, which inevitably doesn't work for most people, right? It's like most people go on some kind of, it could be a 3-month program or whatever it may be. They hit January 1 and they're cutting out all the things. Like we're not eating anything bad for us, quote unquote. And inevitably after 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, they fall off the wagon, which is where most women come to us saying, I've tried everything. I've tried every diet under the sun. I've tried every exercise program. And maybe it works for a period of time, but it's not sustainable. And then I fall off. Or I know what I have to do and what I should do, but I just can't do it. Or I just can't stick to it. Or I don't have the motivation. So unfortunately, so many women come to us feeling like they're out of control, that they can't trust their body, that no matter what they do, they'll fail because it's a willpower problem. And unfortunately, it's not a willpower problem, because we have been so conditioned to fear food and to fear our bodies, and that being in a body that we like and that is healthy has to be hard. And that just is patently false, because our bodies are built in from day one, able to be regulated around food. We have our hunger fullness cues, right? And that is a hormonal system. So our brain talks to our stomach, and we have 2 primary hormones that are in charge for that. We have ghrelin, which I like to remember, it makes our stomach growl. That's our hunger hormone. That says, when you start to think about food, it's starting to be, 1 o'clock and you're thinking about lunch. That's ghrelin at play saying you're hungry. Then you sit down and you have a meal. And then as the meal takes up space in your stomach, it starts to add pressure to that stomach wall. That sends a signal to the brain. And the brain sends back a hormone called leptin. And leptin is our fullness cue. That's our fullness hormone saying we've had enough. Now, if you've ever been around kids, or if you've had kids or just seen them, you can tell that they have a really strong ability to regulate their own hunger and their own fullness. It's why when kids are going through a growth spurt, they're ravenous and they're eating everything in sight. And then the next week, they might take 4 bites of their dinner and then they're back to playing. It's not, it has nothing to do with whether they want to eat or not. It's that hormone system in them is actually still intact. We're all born with that, and we lose it as we go through adulthood. And there's some kind of logical reasons for that. They go to school, they can't eat on demand anymore. Maybe they're hungry at 10:30 in the morning for lunch, but they have to wait until noon. So we start to condition ourselves to not pay as close attention to our hunger and fullness cues as we would if we just were able to eat when we're hungry and stop when we're full. But there's also a lot of messaging around our hunger fullness in that we can't trust it, right? And like I said, it's like we start to outsource that ability to regulate our own hunger and our own fullness to the outside world through a diet, through scales, through counting our macros, through, there's all kinds of ways that we start to police our own ability to have food. And what happens for a lot of women when they come into our practice is that they've lost that ability to regulate. And it's not that they don't have it, it's just that they've spent so many years ignoring it that the body's signals have gotten so quiet that they can't hear them. So that looks like, skipping meals, or, saying, well, maybe I am hungry at 10 a.m., but I should just resist and go as long as I can until I just can't take it anymore. And then it reaches 2 p.m. and they're ravenous. So then they're over hungry and they sit down and they're eating everything, or they run, they get home from work and it's not quite dinner time, but they're grabbing, standing in front of the fridge and just grabbing handfuls of something because they're so hungry, to the point where then they can't hear that fullness cue. That leptin is actually really quiet. And so we blow past it, we overeat, or we, sometimes we'll emotionally eat, which we can talk about too. It's like we're trying to fill up, and our body doesn't have that very loud, innate ability to tell us that we're full anymore. And so with women, it really is about trying to find trust in our bodies again, because we were born able to do this. It's not a diet. It's not an exercise routine. It's not, if you only ever ate vegetables. It actually is like we have this really built-in beautiful system to regulate our food consumption. It's just that we've done so many things in our lives to ignore it that we can't hear it anymore.
Yeah, we're all guilty of that. When it's like
Yeah.
emotional eating, like I don't know. You said children, they're not guilty of it because again, we talk about childlike belief. They don't, that's why, it's not eating, but you'll have to tell them, don't touch the stove. Don't go near the balcony. You could fall. They don't understand danger yet. They're just completely free. They're open. They trust and they have faith. And we overthink every single thing. I train on this. I'm a coach on this, the mindset. And then we still do it. I mean, I'll be like, oh, today was a great day. Now, one of the things I do say that I've learned to be really good at, if I have a craving for a burger and fries, I'm going to eat it. Because when I do hold myself off for a certain amount of time, and then you go and eat it, and then that one day leads to 2 bad days, and then it's like, oh, I might as well just keep going until I have to start over. So I've kind of removed that mindset of like a reset. It was like, that was amazing. I enjoy it when I'm eating it. I appreciate it when I'm eating it. I value every single bite. I like my condiments. I love my ketchup. I love my aioli. I love all of the things. And I thoroughly enjoy it. And then the next day, I'm like, okay, I have my shakes, which I love. I have my protein, which I love. I have my vegetables that I love. And so I have found that, especially now at 52 years old, that works better for me, because when I restrict too much, then I end up like, once I do eat it, you kind of view it as falling off the wagon. And I just kind of, if I have I was visiting my daughter or bringing her home from school in Florida, and we had dinner and she was like, let's get ice cream. I just don't eat dairy the way I used to, but I was really in the mood for it. I ate it. I enjoyed every single bite. I didn't feel great afterwards. And I was like, you know what? I don't feel great afterwards, but it was worth it. Instead of penalizing myself for eating it and beating myself up, I'm like, it was worth it because it was delicious. And tomorrow I'll feel amazing. And I did. I woke up the next day and I felt amazing because I pretty much eat healthy 90% of the time and do the work on the gut, that although I felt bloated and uncomfortable at the time, and I'm sure a lot of it was psychological, not always physical, psychological, like I was psychologically punishing myself because I got a regular size instead of a kitty size, and a family could have eaten it. And I ate the whole thing. Okay, so we're guilty of it. So I think the next question, which I think you really kind of answered, and we can go on to the next one, is how did we all get so dysregulated with food?
Yeah. Well, and I think I just want to acknowledge you for that mentality, and that shift in thinking is exactly what we're talking about today. Because when we get too restrictive, we end up going into like, it is unrealistic for us to say, I'm never going to have a burger and fries again, or I'm never going to have ice cream.
I mean, I love
it's amazing.
a good burger with the works and the fries with every condiment that I could possibly get.
Yeah. And I don't want to live in a world where I can't have a burger and fries. Like, that's just not the life that I want to live, because food is, yes, it is information. Yes, it is health. Yes, it is gut health. Yes, it is mood. Like, it is information, and it is celebration, and it is joy, and it is pleasure, and it is connection. Like, food plays such a pivotal, critical role in our life. To feel like we're in a vice grip around it, it just isn't sustainable, and it doesn't feel good. And exactly what you said, like, when you restrict yourself of being able to have the ice cream or being able to have the burger, and you have this entire belief around what it's going to do to your body, or, that you have to then use it as currency and you have to work out extra hard the next day, you go into the situation really setting yourself up to fail, because you might be able to withstand, right? You might be able to go out. Everybody else is getting the burger and fries. It looks amazing. It smells amazing. You're salivating. That's what you actually want to eat. And you order the dang salad because you should, right? Or because you want to lose weight, or because the burger is terrible for you, or whatever the story is about the burger. You get the salad, but you're so unsatisfied because it's actually not what you wanted. And maybe you do that 10, 15, 20 times that you go out to a meal. Eventually, maybe you'll go on vacation and you're like, you know what? No diet this week. Like, I'm going to get that burger and fries that I've been craving for the past 5 weeks. And what happens is that because you go into this meal with a scarcity mindset, like burgers are bad, you can never eat burgers, you're bad if you eat the burger, you end up eating more of that food because it's like, well, I know that I'm never going to get this. The body goes, well, you should eat as much as, like, get while the getting's good, because you're not going to be able to eat this burger ever again. And then it's the shame spiral that happens after you eat the burger and fries that then can contribute to you feeling bloated or just bad in your body. Was it really the burger and fries, or is it because of the shame spiral that happened after the burger and fries? And so what you said, like, that is such an important message for women to hear, is that it's not all or nothing. It doesn't mean you can't have the burger and fries, that you can't have the cookies, that you can't have ice cream with your grandkids. Like, you can have it all.
Kids,
You can
not
prioritize
grandkids. I'm not a grandmother yet. Kids. I would not normally correct you, but kids.
Child, my bad.
Yeah. I am definitely relighting the hair around my face because I already look older to you. I'm making an appointment as soon as we hang up.
That's amazing.
As you're talking, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I look old.
I'm so sorry.
So good.
but it is like, and for you to figure that out on your own and be like, well, if I'm too restrictive about this, then it actually sends me down the wrong path. And that's exactly my point, is like, we can prioritize our health and we can eat sauerkraut and we can eat vegetables, but we also can have the burger and fries and enjoy it and then let it go and forget about it.
You guys are the professionals, but I know for me, like, just like you said, when I do eat salads, because I eat salads a lot, as I'm eating, I'm like, I love this so much. I'm in the mood for it. Like, I went out to lunch the other day with a friend of mine and I ordered a Caesar salad with chicken. And I said, hold the croutons. I really didn't want them. It was like a waste of that type of stuff for me because I don't care if it's in my salad. And I enjoyed every last bite. But then there's times where I'm having something else. I've learned how to love both, that I don't view healthy food as a punishment. I am definitely a foodie. Like, when I think about a vacation, I think about food. When I think about a holiday, I think, and not in an unhealthy way, I'm like, food brings my family together. It brings my friends together. It brings my team together. I'm one of those people that we're on vacation, we're having lunch. I'm like, so what are we doing for dinner? Like, what are we doing? Where do we make reservations? Because I genuinely love food, and I actually love my relationship with food. Sometimes I'm annoyed at myself. I'm like, that really, and sometimes I eat something and I'm like, that actually wasn't worth it. Like that, it's that thing of like, I thought I wanted it, I didn't even enjoy it. Whereas sometimes I'll have the ice cream and be like, I really enjoyed that. I don't feel well, but it was worth it. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Totally.
yeah. So that brings us to the next thing of like, what's really the difference between hunger and cravings, which you've touched on a bit.
Yep. Yeah. And you actually were just brought that up in the beginning of this. Like, sometimes you crave a burger, and for you listen to it, you honor it, and you have it, and then you forget about it.
Yeah.
And that, again, like, I really want to acknowledge your relationship with food. This is actually a really cool conversation to have with you, because you are very regulated around it. So hunger and cravings are driven by two different pathways. Hunger is driven by that leptin ghrelin hormones like Katie was talking about, and cravings are driven by dopamine. And we will do, especially in this society, we'll do just about anything to get a dopamine, quote unquote, dopamine hit. You'll hear that term, right? It's like getting on social media releases dopamine. Cold plunging releases dopamine. Cocaine releases dopamine. Alcohol releases dopamine. Caffeine. All of these things that we're doing, gambling, online shopping, all of these things that we do to release dopamine, because that's our motivation and that's our feel good. It's our pleasure hormone. And so when we are actually hungry, it increases appetite. And that's when, so if you're sitting in your kitchen and you're quote unquote craving chocolate, or you think you're hungry, ask yourself if you had a bowl of vegetables in front of you right now, would you eat it? And if the answer is yes, you're hungry. If the answer is no, you have a craving. And so that can help people start to differentiate what is actually driving the ship, because many of us do quote unquote emotionally eat when we get triggered, upset, sad, mad, happy, joyful, whatever, and we reach for food. Oftentimes that's a pacifier for dopamine. And so really listening. And the other thing that will happen with cravings versus hunger is if you wait long enough, the hunger will get worse and the craving will go away.
So let me ask you a question. Like, do we consider cravings a bad thing?
Yeah, no, I don't think cravings are a bad thing. I think it's just when we are unconscious about
Acknowledge
eating.
it. Like what
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we all have preference, when
Right.
we're hungry and we have a preference. Like I could be craving the burger because that's my preference for today. Or like you, I also love a good Caesar salad. So it's like I could be craving that today too. And it's actually being able to like feel into what you actually want, not what you should be eating, right? Then there's also, there are it can be challenging for people when they have a very challenged or loaded relationship to food. What I think Tanda's speaking into is more like, you've got ice cream in the refrigerator or in the freezer, and you're sitting on the couch and you've just had a meal and you feel really satiated and that meal was delicious, but you're sitting on the couch after dinner and that ice cream is just like calling your name.
Yeah.
And so then you go for like a little bit of then you're like, I'll just have a bite, and then a bite is never inevitably not enough. So then you go back for a bowl and then you go back for another bowl. That would be more the craving. The conversation that we're talking about is like, is this really driven by hunger and because you want the ice cream, or is it really actually about your relationship to the ice cream and the dopamine that you're getting it from? And that's where we talk about more of that emotional eating. Like food is emotional. I mean, it's like we've all sat down and had immense joy around, the dinner table with people. Like you said, it's like you could go out on vacation and you're with your family and it's an amazing time and the food is delicious and food is amazing. It's like, it's just such a great part of our life. But then what happens is like when we're feeling really sad or we're feeling bored or we're feeling lonely or we're feeling overwhelmed, and what we're chasing in that moment, it really isn't food, it is that dopamine. And that's where that craving comes in. And that's okay too. Like to have some level of emotional eating is actually normal. Like we are hardwired to love food and to find pleasure in food. That's not actually a problem. It's how conscious we are of it and how frequently we're doing it. And then what do we tell ourselves after we do it? Like if I have a hard day and I really want some chocolate, that's a normal response. And I can say, I want that chocolate, but it's what happens in my brain afterward. Am I okay with just enough chocolate to kind of scratch that itch? Or then am I in a shame spiral and beating myself up because I should have been stronger and I should have been able to say no to that chocolate, right? It's like, what are we using the chocolate for is really that's the distinction that we have to make, is really what am I doing here? And then how am I treating myself after?
I had one of those days not too long ago. I was just frustrated / sad / mad about something. And I was like, I want carbs. That's what I'm going to do. Again, we know those type of things are comfort food. Like eating macaroni and cheese is just more comfortable than eating broccoli, right? Like I don't need gas when I'm already annoyed. Okay. So I was like, it was an acknowledged thing. So I had almond crackers with hummus. So it's like I could have made worse choices. And I made brown rice pasta. I put pesto on it. And I realized I ate the whole box. But then when I realized the box, I'm like, oh, it was 8 ounces. It wasn't the end of the world, but I did eat half a pound of brown rice pasta. And I wanted it. I was fine with it. And then the next day I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't eat like that all the time, but I enjoyed every darn bite of it. But I definitely connected with, I want comfort food and I do not want to eat broccoli and chicken right now. As much as I love it, I do not. I want to eat pesto with parm and I want to sit here in my nonsense and enjoy it.
I love that. I think too, what Katie's saying is like, insert the word distraction instead of craving.
Okay.
So craving can actually be a really healthy thing, like the burger. I'll just pick on all of us because three of us love burgers. And if I go to a restaurant, I see a Caesar salad and a burger because I love both.
Yeah.
right? That's where I close my eyes and I'm like, imagine eating both of them. Which does my body want more, right?
Yeah.
That can be a craving that's not necessarily driven by dopamine.
Right.
Because I'm actually checking in with my body. I'm actually like really excited about eating this. I'm not making either one of them good or bad. I have no judgment about this. I'm like actually just really connecting with my body because I want pancakes for breakfast. And then we had a patient the other day, and she was saying she caught herself while she was doing a task that she didn't want to do. I can't remember what it was. Let's just say it was like doing her taxes. So here she is doing her taxes, and all of a sudden she found herself getting up to go to the cupboard. That is a distraction. She's using food as a distraction, and she was like, "Oh, I was just craving chocolate." And I was like, "Well, were you?
I've done that.
Or were you just
I've done
exactly?"
it.
And so I
I've had
think
to do
that's
something. All of a sudden, I'm eating nuts, a bowl of nuts in the kitchen.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's the distinction. Is like, are you actually checking in with your body? I really want the burger versus the salad, or today I really want the salad versus the burger, or I don't want to be doing taxes right now. So you know what I really want to do is eat chocolate
100%.
or nuts.
Yeah.
And so that's the dopamine versus the hunger fullness cues, or that craving versus the distraction craving. But it becomes like, I know when we watch women really start to be honest with themselves, like that patient that we had the other day who was doing her taxes and she all of a sudden found herself in front of the pantry. She was like, I would have never noticed this before if we hadn't started having these conversations about my relationship with food and my body and what I make it mean and all the rules that I have and the shoulds and the can'ts and the won'ts and the cheating foods and the good foods and it's exhausting.
It is exhausting. Sometimes it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
It's really, especially now that we're reading labels and we're doing all this stuff.
Yeah,
all right. So
true.
another question is, how do you re-regulate and redefine your relationship with food? Like, where do we even start? And for me, I feel like it's been an ongoing process. It's not like a wake up one day, plug in your Nespresso machine, and we're all good. Like it's an ongoing, just the way I look at personal growth. I think it's a lifelong commitment and journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but you guys are the experts. So I know our listeners are curious.
Yeah, I think the first step is get honest with yourself about what's the conversation happening between your ears about food. Is it a tortured relationship? Is it an uncomfortable relationship? Is it something that you think about all the time? It's like I have had periods of my life, and I know a lot of my patients just wake up and they're like, I think about food first thing in the morning until the last thing at night. Like I am constantly thinking about if I should eat it, should I not eat it? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? And like, will I be able to? What am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to like? It's just this constant narrative noise in our brain. And if that's you, that it really is possible to not have that, to turn that down. And I think to, Tanda's point at the beginning is that's what is possible is like when we can turn that noise down and we're not spending so much brain power obsessing or thinking about the food and the choices that we're making around our food and, our bodies and whether they're good enough or they look good enough, we can spend that brain power on other stuff that actually matters. Right. And that's like where we actually then get to go into our life and be able to use all of that brain power to something that really is going to set our life on fire rather than something that is just, obsessive and we're worrying about it. So I think getting honest with yourself about like how this plays out in your life. What are the rules that you have around food? What are the beliefs you have around food? Is it something that you feel kind of out of control around or that you need some support in redefining that relationship? So I think that's kind of step one. And then step two is relearning those hunger fullness cues. That's a huge part of this is actually getting back in your body and listening to your body and allowing those hunger fullness cues to come back online because we all have it. We're all capable of it. They've just gotten really quiet. So one of the ways that we can do that is by eating in regular intervals. So when we are eating really sporadically or we're skipping meals or we're overeating, we've blown past those hunger fullness cues for a long time. We're not actually listening to our body and not actually eating when we're hungry, or we're overeating and overconsuming past the point of fullness on a regular basis. So how we do that is our bodies crave routine. And so when if you had breakfast every single morning at 8 a.m., come 7:30, 7:45, your body would start to, like, your stomach's going to start to growl. You're going to be ready for that meal because your body's accustomed to the fact, and it knows and it trusts that you're going to feed it at 8 a.m. That's exactly kind of what we do, is we put a clock in place where we're eating at regular intervals for a consistent period of time so that your body can start to acknowledge the fact that it's going to get food, and it can start to send those signals at a regular interval. So what happens is if you're eating regularly at 8 a.m., you're eating maybe a snack at 10, you're eating lunch at 1, then you're maybe having another snack, maybe then you're having dinner. What happens in the beginning is that we can't actually trust our hunger fullness cues because they're not loud enough. It's not like there's times where you might look at that schedule and be like, well, I'm not even hungry. Like, I just had breakfast. I'm not even hungry. How we start to relearn that is by putting a clock in place so that our body can start to ramp up that hormone production. When we ramp up that hormone production, we can start to take the clock away. We can start to take some of those meal times. And what will happen is that your body actually will just naturally start to crave and eat when it's hungry. And you'll be able to notice when it's full because, again, we're going to start to retrain those hormones to come back online. That, I think, is like a huge first step for people, is just starting to listen to our body again. Because there are a lot of diets that we don't, right? It's like we do the diet and we're actually starving, or we're counting our macros, and you're like, it's 10 p.m. and you're like, I better have a protein shake because I didn't meet my protein goals, even though you're not actually hungry. It's like there's all these ways that we ignore our body's signaling. So it's allowing yourself to give your body a circumstance that it can start to listen again. So that's kind of, I would say, step one.
And it also really begins in our mind too. So when you talk about having a really unhealthy relationship, if I were to keep saying, I'm fat, everything I eat makes me gain weight. If I eat after 6 o'clock, I'm going to gain 5 pounds. If I eat that cheeseburger, I'm going to blow up like a balloon. These are stories that we tell ourselves that actually we bring to fruition because our body has the ability to heal. Our words are powerful. Our words form our belief forms our actions. Like, energy is everything. It's everything. So obviously what you're putting in your body is really important, but what you're feeding your mind is also very, very, very important. Because if you're going to tell yourself, I'm over 50, I can't lose weight. I'm over 50, I can't lose weight. I'm over 50, then guess what? You're over 50 and you can't lose weight. Like, you will take the actions to support that limiting belief. Right? Like, I can't eat before 2. I can't eat before 2. We tell ourselves these things. We think about food 24 hours a day. Like, if I eat this, I'm going to gain weight. Well, when you eat this, you hear all the time people go, like, I eat anything I want and I never gain weight. I don't believe that's all genetics. I don't. I believe that's a fact. They hold true. I can eat anything I want and I don't gain weight. I can, and they've affirmed that, and their body's cells react to that level of mindset because they're kind of intuitively feeding their body when it's hungry. They're eating what they enjoy. Ideally, it's not Milky Ways and Twinkies all day long, right? But they have that mindset. And I think the mindset, and I want our listeners to know this, it does play a really big part in this also, because our mind can make us really unhealthy.
Well, I think this is all a mind game, truthfully. It's like the entire relationship to food is based in our brain and based in our belief system. That is absolute fact, that how the stories that we bring to the dinner table will play out how we feel. It'll play out in the choices that we make. It'll play out in, how we harm ourselves with food and or reward ourselves with food or placate ourselves with food. Like, it is such a mental game, which is why we really have to start there. It's like there's some physiological things that we have to put in place, because intuitive eating really is the goal for a lot of people. But we can't go from how we consume food and how we think about food in a dysregulated, unhealthy way to then intuitive eating just overnight. We have to have this bridge to get there, because if you're eating a standard American diet, that's not an intuitive way to fuel our body either, because that's not giving it the nutrients that it needs. It's not taking care of your body the way that it wants to take care of, so that it can do all of the jobs to the best of its ability and to take care of yourself. So, a diet of French fries and Milky Ways isn't intuitive eating either. Right. And also, restricting ourselves and not being able to have joy and comfort and pleasure around food is also not intuitive eating, because you're denying that intuition.
Correct.
That actually we need both. And so that is, the other thing is like learning how to build a plate, right? And this is where we coach a lot of people is the three main macronutrients that we need are fat, protein, and carbohydrates. We also need fiber. So I'm going to put those 4 units of like, that's what you want on every plate that you make, because it's going to honor the needs of your body while also honoring what you want to eat and creating a healthy relationship to all foods. So fats are things like butter, tallow, lard, olive oil, avocados, coconut oil, nuts and seeds. Like that would be your fat category. Proteins would be, predominantly any like animal-based food. So we're thinking like cottage cheese, chicken, fish, steak, pork, and then, the vegetarian options that we can do, beans, lentils, that kind of thing. We would call that protein. Then fiber is going to be your fruits and vegetables. And then carbohydrates can be, carbohydrates one day could be rice, it could be pasta, it could be pizza, it could be butternut squash, it could be beets, it could be quinoa, it could be that's kind of the carbohydrate umbrella. So when you think about making a meal, thinking about, do I have all 4 tenets at a meal? Do I have my fiber? Do I have my protein? Do I have my carbohydrate? And do I have my fat? Now you can pick any combination of those that you want, but you want to make sure that you've got all of them at a meal. The reason for this is that, when we sit down and we just have a giant bowl of pasta, right? And not to say that I don't sometimes do that, but if we're just doing that on a regular basis, I'm not meeting my nutrient demand. What I might be doing is maybe meeting my caloric demand. Like I might be getting enough, quote unquote, food for the day, but my body's not going to feel satiated and it's not going to feel like it's had enough because I'm missing protein, I'm missing fiber, and I'm missing fat. When we are just focusing on, like a big portion of something, or if I just had, protein and I just had, broccoli, I'm not getting enough carbohydrates. So my body is still going to be craving that nutrients. But when we focus on creating a balanced plate, we get to meet our nutrient demands. We get to, have joy. If it is, if we're choosing that our carbohydrate at this meal is going to be pizza, then I'm probably going to pick a pizza that has some sort of protein on that. Maybe I'll get something with, sausage or chicken on it. And then I might get a salad on the side so that I'm getting enough fiber. I'm creating a balanced meal despite what I'm eating. And when we take that tenet into anything, so often we think about what we can take away from food. So if I'm going to eat pizza, then I better not eat anything else because I don't want the calories. We actually want to think about what you can add to that meal to make it a more balanced nutritional profile. And when we start to focus on that, we actually feel satiated. We feel like we've had enough food and our cravings reduce because we know that we can have the pasta. We know that we can have the pizza, and we know that we can do that while taking care of our physical needs. And that's just creating, just having that framework, I think can be really, really helpful for people to, when they think about, taking care of their bodies and being in a body that feels good while also being able to enjoy the foods that they want to.
So I have a question around rice. I know
Yes.
the program that I put clients on and coach them through, it's brown rice. We remove white rice. I have my son who's training for an Ironman, and he will not touch brown rice and only believes in white rice. And he'll go down like the Titanic to prove his point. Like he studies nutrition. Do you have an opinion on brown rice versus white rice?
I mean, I think so. Brown rice, kind of historically, they thought that there was more fiber in brown rice and that it would have a lower glycemic load. So just meaning that it would spike your blood sugar less. I think there's 2 camps to that. I think brown rice can also be kind of hard on our digestion because it does have that fibrous piece on it. So there's kind of one camp that say that we actually should be eating white rice. I think it's probably, they're all carbohydrates at the end of the day.
Right.
I think more based on preference. I don't think there's a huge nutritional difference in them, especially with white rice in particular. When it cools, a lot of the starch and the carbohydrates in that rice turn into what's called resistant starch. So if you make a pot of rice and then you allow it to cool, come to room temperature, you can heat it back up. But that process of cooking it and it being hot to cool, we change the molecular structure of that starch that it actually becomes like not absorbable by the human body, but it is amazing food for our microbiome. So I think that there's a time and place for both brown rice and white rice, and it comes down to preference.
Okay.
I would, because again, I don't want to say, I very consciously don't say, oh, this food is bad, that food is good.
Yeah.
And if I was going to pick one, I would vote with your son. That I think just phytic acid wise, like Katie said, especially if it's cooled, white rice actually has, I think, more benefit to the body. But again, it's like if there's white rice in front of me and brown rice in front of me and I had to choose, probably would choose white rice. But if brown's the only thing there, I'd eat that too. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm just, you know what? Tell your son he's right.
Yeah. He already knows. He already knows. Look, at the end of the day, I look at him and I look at me. Like, if somebody's going to take business advice, if somebody's going to get health advice, like I look at him, I'm like, he looks like a Greek Adonis and I don't. Yes. So clearly, now granted, he's one of the most disciplined human beings that I've ever met in my life. And he knows everything. Like he studies nutrition. He loves nutrition. He loves the way different things work on his body. And he makes sure that he fuels it really, really correctly because of the amount of, he exercises on an average 28 times a week. And I remember we moved Brooke, my oldest, into her new apartment in Delaware. There's people like, we have to be there at 7 a.m. in Pennsylvania, move her to Delaware, unpack everything, drive 4 hours home. I just can't work out that day. Well, he works with a coach. He's training for an Ironman. The Ironman's in 6 weeks. He woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do a 4-hour bike. He was at his sister's by 7 a.m., did the move, and then meal prepped all of his stuff. And then on the way home, found somewhere that he could run 14 miles and then get home and do his thing. And I'm like, that's why you run an Ironman. And I'm pumped if I run 2 miles, he's just, yeah. So he does a lot of, and the other day, my daughter was making him a meal because the kitchen's all under renovation. He's all stressed out about that. And he weighs everything, not to lose weight, but to make sure he's actually eating enough. And when she put the rice on the scale, she was like, he can't possibly be eating this much. Maybe the scale is off, but he makes sure that he consumes enough calories because he burns so many, Mm-hmm. So he weighs it for the opposite reason. He said, if I don't weigh it, I won't eat enough.
Well, that's exactly it. He's not necessarily doing something that we would just like naturally feel into our body and be like, I woke up at 4 a.m. I did did a cycle and now I want to go for a 14-mile run. If we were just like listening to our bodies in that way, we probably wouldn't do that. So he probably can't just listen to his body and get enough nutritional demand because that's a different ballgame for sure, which is great. It's awesome. When's his Ironman?
When is it?
Yeah.
It's June 9th, and then he's doing one in September, and then he's doing one in November.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. But he's just a mentally strong, disciplined, focused. He was a, 3-time All-American athlete in college, and now he's in the professional world, but this is just something that he uses to level up in his life. He's it's inspiring. It's like living with a superhero. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He'll be like, are you doing this today? I'm like, I can't even tell him I have a busy day because he's like, wake up at 3 and do it. Like, I don't want to wake up at 3. I don't. So anywho, this brings us to our last question, but it'll probably be a little bit, because I think we kind of touched on how do you have a healthy relationship with food and meet your needs. And I think we kind of talked about that, but top 5 things, everybody loves top 5 things to do to help women create a new relationship to food and their bodies. Because I think the end of the day, we all want that, because how we do anything is how we do everything. And if we're not comfortable in our skin, if we're not comfortable in our body, we're going to show up that way in business. We're going to show up that way in our relationships. We're going to show up that way in our friendships. And it's going to be the energy that we either attract things in our life and repel things. So having a healthy relationship with food and our body, especially as women, I don't want to say men not as much, but men not as much. Men don't put on something, and if they don't feel good, they're all twisted for the day. I put something that doesn't look good, I'm twisted. Yeah.
Oh, we get it. And I also want to touch, before we dive into the 5 things, I want to touch on something that, Katie was talking about, building a plate, and with all foods, right? we have a handout that we give our patients that has lists of carbohydrates, proteins, fibers, and fats, and they can just mix and match. And pizza's on there, pasta's on there, ice cream's on there, right? Because we want people to build that regulation with food and to build that whole and complete plate. And when they're out with their kid and want ice cream, that's okay. And they don't have to overexercise the next day. They don't have to skip the next meal. And Katie's going to talk about number one. But I think that's probably one of the biggest things that blows people's paradigms when they're working with us, is that when women come to us primarily for weight loss and hormone balancing, they're expecting an exercise routine and a diet, because that's what everybody else is doing. That's what everybody else has done. And that's what they've been doing for the past 3 decades or 4 decades or 5 decades. And so they're just expecting that to be the paradigm that we're in. And when we tell them not to go do intermittent fasting, not yet. When we tell them that their blood sugar is out of whack, because 96.2% of us are metabolically unwell. So we have to correct that first. And then we tell them that there is no food, outside of celiac and then therapeutic diets, which we do use. And that's a different topic, but we tell them that all food is on the table, that the entire grocery store is available to them. They don't have to shop just 4 aisles because that's what their last health coach told them to do. And I'm not knocking other people's programs, but what is very challenging for women to do, and I'm assuming when people are listening to this podcast that this is going to be a little bit of a brain bend, that we're telling you not to skip meals. We're telling you do not intermittent fast yet. We're telling you to actually pay attention, do intuitive eating, give yourself permission, make a list of your food rules and where those came from and how can we, with regulation around that, watch them melt away. So I just wanted to touch on, with us building in regulation with our patients, it is mind bending for people. And I also just want to acknowledge that and throw that out there because it can be really hard to hear. They're like, whoa. These 2 naturopathic doctors are telling us to eat pizza. Like that doesn't sound like health. Mm-hmm. And yet it is. And that's where the total freedom with food. And if pizza is your super scary food, that will be a binge purge for you. Like the binge purge restrict, right? Or maybe not purge, but binge restrict for you. So when you're like, I can never eat pizza again. Well, what if we told you had to eat pizza every single day for the rest of your life? By month 3, you'd be begging us to not eat pizza anymore. Right? So it's creating this new regulation with food. When you can have all foods, there's no foods that's off limits that then is like the knocking ice cream in the freezer in the background, like, oh, you go eat me. And it's like, you're thinking, I'm going to get fat if I eat you. I'm a bad person if I eat you. I will have to go over exercise. And then I have to skip meals. Then I have to eat the whole thing. Right? So when we take all foods and put them on the table and say, you can actually choose anything. What would you choose? And how to build that complete plate, like Katie said. So if you are going to eat ice cream, have some berries with it, or have a handful of nuts. So you're getting that fiber and that. So it's completely. I look at Western medicine and naturopathic medicine like 2 sides of looking glass, whereas Western medicine is approaching from disease state that we can remove. Right? It's like cancer, cut it out. And not that that's bad. Functional medicine looks at cancers in the body. Well, how is the body terrains? How is that body set up that cancer is thriving? And how can we shift that? And this is what Katie and I are talking about with our relationship with food. We're not saying do a diet and avoid gluten, dairy, soy, sugar, alcohol, caffeine, corn, eggs, wheat, blah, 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 and then you'll lose the weight and then, give us our money and we'll kick you out the door. We're saying, you're coming to us with an agenda to lose weight. What if we told you that to take your scale, put it behind your back tire and put your car in reverse and drive over it? And we never want you weighing yourself again because it doesn't have anything to do with health, and that this does. So anyway, I just want to preface that before we dive into the 5. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say number 1 is to re-regulate that leptin and ghrelin, is get those hormones back online so that you can actually be in your body and let your body guide you. Number 2 is mindfulness around food. How many of us actually check in with our bodies before we sit down to a meal? How many of us actually put our hand on our chest and say, okay, I am about to eat, and we take it in and we look at our plate and we're like, oh my gosh, can't wait to dive into that. That looks delicious. That's amazing. I'm not sure about that. And then actually check in with us, like, how hungry am I? I'm just going to take notice. I'm going to notice the fact that I'm going to bring my brain to this game, because so many of us, we're just doing the thing and our brain is on us another topic. Like, we're thinking about work, we're answering emails, we're scrolling on social media, we're watching television, we're driving our car, we're standing at the kitchen counter. We're not bringing our brain to the party. We're just eating and being completely distracted and absent-minded while we do that. It's very hard to feel how full we are when we're not paying attention to our body. So sitting down at the table, not eating in any of those distracted ways, actually being present with your food, eating with people you like to eat with, it's like finding community and joy around that, making it an event, sitting down at your meal, and then checking in with yourself halfway through too. It's like, okay, I've had half my meal. That's really delicious. I definitely want to finish that. I'm still feeling hungry. I'm going to eat this. Like, just bringing that awareness back into our body so that we can start to pay attention to that hormonal regulation as it starts to come back online. The other thing would be to really focusing on building that plate of nutrition, right? Because we're not saying only eat, like if the grocery store is open to everything, we're not saying only eat processed foods or only eat vegetables. It's like, actually your body, we want all of it. We want to prioritize our health too, so that we feel good in our bodies and we can take care of this body, right? So it is making sure that we're having fiber at every meal, making sure that we're having carbohydrates and protein and fat at every meal, and building our plate around that. Now, if I'm eating pizza every single day, that's probably not a balanced diet anyway. It's like, but if I never eat pizza, that's also not balanced. So it's finding that experience and finding that ability to build a plate so that we're meeting our nutritional demands, but we're also creating freedom around food. Fourth, I would say, if there are some particularly tricky foods, like I'm going to pick on ice cream because that tends to be one for a lot of people. It may not be like, you may not be at the point where you can have that in the house. We've all heard people say, I can't have that in the house because I can't stay away from it. If I have it in the house, I'm going to eat it. I'm going to eat the whole thing. If you have particular foods like that, I would say creating corrective experiences around that food is very important. So if ice cream rather is one of the sticky foods for someone, and they just like, if it's in the house, they're eating the entire pint and or half gallon, then maybe we're not ready to have it in the house because you haven't built a healthy relationship to that food yet. Build corrective experiences in. So I would say, like, go out to ice cream like you did with your daughter. Like, go be with someone and be like, get a cone and have the whole experience. Go out on a summer night. Have a corrective experience that isn't in your home. That's an intentional way to engage with that food that isn't just absent-minded and just, kind of filling in because we have this really kind of loaded relationship to ice cream. So corrective experiences, I would say, is an important part of the process too. And then Tanda, do you have anything to add?
I mean, there's a million. Number 5, I would say, if you can, grow food, because there is something wicked cool about picking something that you have watched either from a seed or a seedling or a starter. And whether that's like herbs in your window or a full-on garden, or like Katie and Nick here have the galvanized tubs full of lettuce and tomatoes and potatoes and herbs. And so they didn't dig into the earth. They just filled tubs with dirt and planted. And it's just very, very rewarding. And it creates a completely different relationship with connection to your food than going to the grocery store and buying lettuce haphazardly and, throw it in your cart. And it's like a bag of mixed whatever coming from California from whatever farm. And if you can snip from, your windowsill basil plant and throw it into a salad that you're eating, I just think it makes a completely transformed connection to food. That's my favorite one.
Yeah.
Today has been amazing, really, really amazing. And one of the things I love so much about, every episode we've done has been really, really good. But when I think about what I do and train on mindset and talk about vision and belief and leadership, we need to be we need to love ourselves. And love is like, every time you feel that gratitude when you're eating and for what food does for your body, you're feeling that love, you're feeling that gratitude, and that transcends into every single thing we do. So it literally, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're eating and you're feeling guilt, and I'm not coming from a place of a soapbox because I've been there, but when you're coming from a place of, guilt or shame or especially scarcity, that's going to show up in your business. It's going to show up with the people that you attract in your life. It's going to show up with the conversations. Love brings on more love. Joy brings on more joy. Gratitude brings more things into your life that you will be more grateful for. And so this piece of it is so important to really work on. And again, it's not something that happens overnight. It's it's not. Like, I'm 50, and I think women definitely have a bigger challenge with this than men do, just speaking from my own personal experience. But I can't thank you enough, both of you. And what I would love you to let people know is where they can find you. And my friends, I know I've said it in other podcasts, I don't talk about it on here. I do have a program for a company that I represent that I know these two stand firmly behind. They recommend it to their clients. So feel free to message me, and I would love to talk to you about that. But if you would like to follow Tanda and Katie, they'll let you know where you can find them.
Yeah, the best place for us is on Instagram. My handle is Dr. Tanda Cook, and Katie's is Dr. Katie Collier. And we also have a website, drtandacook.com. I'm on Facebook. And honestly, if you Google my name, you'll find me. But Instagram really is the best way to connect.
Well, I want to thank you both very much. I really appreciate you. I've been loving getting to know both of you. This has been super informative, super fun, and I know we'll be back. So thank you both so much.
We love you.
I love you guys.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everybody, and go eat something amazing. Bye.